I purposely stopped my classmate from winning an award and subsequently made her cry. So this happened back in my senior year of high school. There was this girl in my AP literature class named Jenna who was basically the teacher's pet. She always sat in the front row, raised her hand for every single question, and had this annoying habit of correcting other people when they talked. You know the type. Our teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, announced this big poetry contest where the winner would get a $500 scholarship and their poem published in the school literary magazine. Jenna immediately started talking about how she was going to enter and how she'd been writing poetry since she was like 8 years old. She wouldn't shut up about it. The thing is, I actually wrote poetry too, but I kept it private. I had this whole notebook filled with stuff I'd written over the years, mostly about my parents' divorce and dealing with anxiety, real personal stuff. But hearing Jenna act like she was the only one in class who could write made me want to prove her wrong. I spent like 3 weeks working on my submission. I wrote about my little brother who has autism and how he sees the world differently than everyone else. It was probably the most honest thing I'd ever written. Meanwhile, Jenna kept talking about her poem during lunch, describing it as a profound exploration of teenage angst, or whatever. She even practiced reading it out loud in the hallway. The deadline was on a Friday, and we had to submit our poems in person to Mrs. Rodriguez during lunch. I got there early and saw Jenna walking toward the classroom with this fancy folder in her hands. She was walking super carefully, like she was carrying the crown jewels or something. That's when I noticed something. The hallway had just been mopped, and there were those yellow wet floor signs everywhere. Jenna was so focused on her folder that she wasn't really paying attention to where she was stepping. I could see she was about to walk right through a puddle that the janitor had missed. Here's where I messed up. Instead of warning her, I just watched. Part of me was curious what would happen, and part of me was still annoyed about her whole superior attitude. She stepped right into the water, her foot slipped, and she went down hard. Her folder went flying and all her papers scattered across the wet floor. I immediately felt terrible and ran over to help her up. She was crying, not just from falling, but because her poem was completely soaked and ruined. The ink had run and you couldn't read any of it. She kept saying my poem, over and over while trying to peel the wet papers apart. Mrs. Rodriguez came out to see what happened, and Jenna explained between sobs that her contest entry was destroyed. The teacher felt bad and said she could have until Monday to resubmit, but Jenna said she didn't have another copy saved anywhere. She'd handwritten the whole thing and never typed it up. I helped her gather the soggy papers and walked her to the nurse's office. She had scraped her knee pretty bad and was still crying. While we were sitting there waiting for the nurse, she told me that she'd been working on that poem for over a month, and that winning the contest was really important to her because her family was struggling financially. That hit me hard. I realized I had no idea what was going on in her life outside of school. Maybe all that showing off was because she was insecure or stressed about money at home. I felt like such a jerk for not warning her about the water. I ended up winning the contest with my poem about my brother. When they announced it during morning announcements, I looked over at Jenna and she was staring down at her desk. She tried to smile and congratulate me later, but I could tell she was still upset about it. I used the scholarship money to buy my brother some new art supplies since he loves to draw.